In 1901, Boas's experience in organizing the material objects of cultural life, both in Berlin and Chicago, landed him a job as curator at the American Museum of Natural History. Here he was radically to change the emphasis and aims of organizing museum display. For him, these items should not just be a collection of curios, but rather impart systematic information and provide healthy entertainment and instruction. He held this post simultaneously with that of Professor of Anthropology at Columbia University in New York. But he didn't only teach. He was also responsible for organizing a massive research project known as the Jessup North Pacific Expedition. This, among other things, was aimed at documenting facts about the physical characteristics, culture, and languages of all the tribes of the area, as well as collecting the elaborate objects that they made. If you want to know more about an object, it helps not only if you know how it was made, but what it was made for. Because of his intimate and detailed knowledge of Indian life, Boas was able to place each of these objects in its original context. He understood where it fitted into Indian life, so it wasn't just another item in a museum catalogue. This splendid carving, for example, of an eagle, is a representation of a mythical ancestor of a family that Boas knew well living at Fort Rupert. It's a revealing mask, and it shows that from the mythical ancestor, the original and first member of the family appeared on Earth. It's a funeral mask, and 3 or 4 days after the death of a relative, it was used in the ceremony to symbolize the fact that once someone had died, they eventually returned to a land where all members of that family were once again eagles. The ancient and elaborate cultural life of peoples like the Kwakiutl was recorded in minute detail by Franz Boas. Fortunately, we also have a visual record of what some aspects of life actually looked like, as one of Boas's contemporaries was the great photographer of American Indians, Edward Curtis. Curtis had been traveling around America, making a photographic record of every remaining Indian tribe. As there were enough people alive who remembered the old ways, Curtis commissioned Indians to recreate life as it used to be. These were usually dramatic events, like the landing of war canoes or performing of ceremonies in an authentic fashion, and he paid them to make all the necessary traditional objects. Although it was recreating the past and frowned upon by Boas, it did place on record just how elaborate ceremonial life had been. One unusual feature of certain of these ceremonies was the disposal of vast quantities of personal wealth to the guests who attended. The distribution focused on 2 particular objects and raised interesting questions about value and exchange within the culture. Knowing what objects are doesn't always tell you everything about them. This piece of copper in the shape of a shield, for example, was almost certainly never used in combat. And this amazingly intricate and beautiful blanket of mountain goat's hair was not designed to keep people warm. They're ceremonial objects, and particularly fine examples of their kind. They have great value for collectors of native art today. But when they circulated originally among the tribes along the northwest coast, they had a value that couldn't simply be measured in terms of money. This copper in the shape of a shield is a very interesting example of one of the things that puzzles anthropologists. On one level, they are a form of currency. in fact the highest denomination in a native system of high finance. On the other, they are ceremonial objects, objects of great prestige. To own them is an honor. A lot's known about each individual copper. We know who made this one, for example. We know that it was called the killer whale copper. They could be bought or sold, they could be exchanged, they could even be given away, and very often they were actually cut up and pieces of the copper were distributed. Very often they were even thrown into the sea as a flamboyant gesture. All of this behavior went on using the copper as a token of exchange in a ceremony, both lavish and complex, that has earned these tribes a lot of attention from anthropologists, and rightly so, because it was at the focus of their lives. That ceremony was called the potlatch.